much for coming on the show. I really
Thank you for
appreciate
having me.
it. Yeah, of
Yes,
course.
sir.
What, if you, in your own words, I mean, I usually do this with every guest because I can try to guess who you are, but I really don't know yet, right? So, in your own words, could you introduce yourself? Who are you and what do you do?
My name is Colin Dale.
Mm-hmm.
I am a filmmaker, a writer, director. I'm a producer as well,
Okay.
unfortunately, because I have to be my own producer.
Mm-hmm.
At this stage in my career, I'd rather not be one down the line. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I grew up in Hingham, Massachusetts. Hingham,
Okay.
Massachusetts is on the south shore of Massachusetts, the south shore of Boston.
Mm-hmm.
I went to high school in Boston. I went to Boston College High School. I went to then subsequently went to USC in LA,
Okay.
and I went to their film school, um, which was it was a life changing experience. It was a overall really good experience
Mm-hmm.
academically,
Mm-hmm.
and professionally. And right now, I am finishing up the post production process on my first feature film,
Okay.
Magnolia Flowers.
Right.
And I'm also attending the American Film Institute in Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's an MFA program in screenwriting. They call it a fellowship, which is sort of like a pretentious way of saying grad school. But it's a very
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a very
I'd have figured.
traditional
Mm-hmm.
institution, so they kind of have they have things that they insist on. One of which is calling us fellows. Um, and so I'm studying the craft of screenwriting very intensely right now.
Okay.
I wrote a lot going into the program, and that's part of why I got into the program.
Mm-hmm.
But the program is like cranking it up a million notches.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so I'm writing a lot of stuff right now, more than
Mm-hmm.
I've ever written in my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
With the hope that will set me up with a habit of churning out that much stuff all the time.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's me though. Currently, I guess professionally, that's me. Yeah.
Right. So it effectively is a graduate program, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And I studied film here at the University of New Mexico, and then I had a
Nice.
couple of colleagues went out there as well. They called it grad school,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of the practices that you do learn in those sort of programs is things that you're going to need to kind of good practices that you're going to need to kind of carry on into your professional life thereafter, right?
100%. Yeah.
So that's kind of something that you're doing right now, which is great. Um, but what's the program again? Screenplay writing or screenwriting?
Screenwriting. Yeah.
Screenwriting, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
A big part of filmmaking is, or wanting to direct your own stuff, really is writing your own stuff, right?
Yes.
You have to be able to kind of do that. Hardly ever are you able to become a director of something that you didn't kind of write yourself or put together yourself, right? So, I mean, let's kind of take a step back a little bit. What about your life and your kind of background led you down this path of filmmaking?
I think of it like, this is going to sound
Mm-hmm.
crazy to some people. It will.
Okay.
I really feel like it's like in my bones. Like I feel
Yeah.
like I have an unfulfilled like past life as a filmmaker,
Huh.
and I'm actually writing a movie about this right now. That Emma is, well, I gave it away. Emma's going to be in the movie. Anyway,
Congrats, Emma.
I gave that away.
That's all good.
It's called Dreams of Self-Destruction. It's a whole thing. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
it's my next movie. Part of what I'm exploring in that movie though is like that I really do feel like I was like put on this earth to be a filmmaker. Like I have no doubts about it.
Okay.
And I've felt that way. I've known it. Like it's been in my bones since I was a little kid. Like I used to literally make films when I was a 9-year-old. Like
using like what were you using? What kind
like
of
a
stories?
VHS camcorder.
And what stories were you putting together?
I loved movies so much, so I did a lot of like spin-offs and knockoffs. So I did like
mm-hmm.
I did Star Wars knockoffs, Indiana Jones knockoffs.
Yeah.
I did like an I Am Legend spin-off with my cousins. I was just
Nice.
yeah. And then
right, because your cousins and your siblings or whatever, they're your crew and cast, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, when I was a little kid, they were.
Yeah.
So me and my cousins would like we did a heist movie once.
Hmm.
We bought a bunch of cap guns and did a bank robbery movie when we were like 12.
Nice.
Which was hilarious.
Okay.
But yeah, I grew up with one of my best friends, Pat Green, like literally in my neighborhood
mm-hmm.
in Massachusetts, like just running around making movies.
Yeah.
And then I started taking it really seriously when I got into high school. Like I took a film class in high school,
mm-hmm.
and it reminded me of how much I loved it. And also it was like, to me, there were no two ways about it. I was like, I'm just going to keep making these movies and just not going to stop. And I like, that's my only plan. Like, is genuinely like to just keep making movies. Like I tell people I have like other plans. I have no other plan. Like honest to God.
There's no backup.
No. I really am just like, I really like, and the more feedback I get from people,
mm-hmm.
the more I'm like, yes, this is exactly my plan it solidifies my plan. Like when I hear people like doubt my belief in myself that I could just like make movies for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I hear that, it solidifies my belief in myself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm just going to share my kind of story is a very similar thing, right? In the backyard, hanging out with a mini VHS camera that my parents had, and they would have me shoot events, whether it was a wedding or whatever, because they wanted to enjoy the whole thing. But they had me, camera one.
That's so funny.
And so I'd get in there and just shoot. But watching, I think a big part of it was I also really, really enjoyed watching movies as a kid, right? And both my parents would always say the best way to kind of keep Oscar busy is to put on a movie, and you've got him locked in for 2 hours.
Yeah,
right?
Totally. Yes.
And I, growing up, I saw a ton of different things. My parents really weren't the most, they were great, but they don't really censor what they showed me. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I watched a lot of horror film early on. What were your early kind of influences? What sort of films were you watching or exposed to? Mostly because as a writer, you're a storyteller, right?
Yeah.
What were your early influences?
First of all, I was going to ask you the same question. So after I answer, I want you to answer because I want to hear what you were watching as like a kid. Mm-hmm. But I watched a lot of like Disney stuff, like old Disney stuff, like Dumbo, like the original Dumbo, which is now a little bit of a taboo film because of racist elements in it, which is obviously super fair. But as a kid, I had it like on VHS, and they remade it recently, and I didn't even see the remake, which is like kind of a disappointment. But anyway, Dumbo, like Bambi, these are when I was like a little kid. Jungle Book I loved Jungle Book. Yeah. So a lot of these like I had like some obscure stuff too. Like I had like a lot of Batman. They did like Batman cartoon movies. And so I watched a bunch of those. A lot of it was animated, which is funny because I have no real interest in doing animation. I shouldn't say that. But
it's so hard. It takes so much work.
It's crazy. I'm like, yeah. Like, and back in the day too, like, not even, I say back in the day when I was like a toddler, you'd hear about like, oh, it took them like 8 years to make Toy Story. You're like, Jesus, like, it's already hard enough. Pardon my language. But I don't know if I can curse on this program.
You can. You're good, man.
Okay.
Fuck.
But what was I going to say? Like, it's already hard enough to make a movie. It's just funny to think about, especially when the animation process was different. I guess Toy Story is not a good reference. It's like more like the old hand-drawn animation movies.
Yeah.
Anyway, a lot of it was animation. A lot of it was like Disney stuff.
Hmm.
And then, as I got older, Star Wars was like the shit,
Like that was like live action first
Yes,
kind of stuff that you watched. Okay.
totally. That and like Indiana Jones, I thought was amazing. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. Oddly enough, like the Scooby Doo live action movies, I loved. Uh,
Fun. I like them. Right. I like them.
yeah,
I enjoyed them. They were entertaining for sure.
yeah.
I mean, I'll answer, but I also want to, I'm wondering if there was an era of film now as an adult that you look back at and you're like, this is it. Right. But think about it while I
Okay,
respond
yeah,
because
I will think about it. Okay.
right. Um, so, I mean, what I was watching, I mean, I watched all those, right? I watched all the animated Disney stuff, the older things from a lot of kind of the 80s stuff, the Breakfast Clubs, the teen
Yes.
things, Fast
Yeah.
Times at Ridgemont High. I had very young parents, so they were watching a lot of these things as well. But also immigrant parents who I'm not sure that maybe it's a cultural difference, but I was watching, I mean, such a big fan of the Friday the 13th series,
Nice.
of
Yeah.
Nightmare on Elm Street, watching
Yeah.
Johnny Depp getting sucked into
A
a
bed.
water bed,
I love that.
and Child's Play. I mean, I had the worst nightmares. Even like Candyman. So many like horror film was probably
Wow,
the genre that really stuck out, right?
that's
As
so
far
cool.
as what I would watch. I don't. It's cool. I have kids now, so them watching this stuff, I can see they're terrified, right? So I'm like, are they wimps or were my parents bad?
Yeah.
I don't think I maybe it's a middle ground because
Yeah.
I don't think if it wasn't for all those things and that exposure to these types of narratives and complex storytelling, I would have developed kind of an interest in that sort of film, right?
Hmm.
Not going to say I didn't walk away with my fair share of trauma. I remember two films my parents vividly said you cannot watch these until you're older. It was two of
Yeah.
them, and then as when I watched them as an
Which were
adult,
what?
yeah, exactly. So it was Seven, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Seven,
Yeah. For sure.
and then Eight
Yeah.
Millimeter with Nick Cage, and it's about snuff films.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
I've never seen it.
I think he's like a detective or vigilante. I can't remember, and he
Yeah.
goes around kind of trying to figure that out. Yeah,
Yeah.
so those were the two that were just like no.
Okay.
But
Interesting.
other than that, I watched some insane stuff, and I think it just kind of desensitized me a little bit as I got older. But for me, movies were such an event. There were Friday afternoon going to Blockbuster or
Yeah.
Hastings, different video areas, sometimes a local small one,
Yeah.
picking out a couple of movies, maybe a few, one for the kids and one for the adults, right?
Totally.
And
Hmm.
then we'd go home. And as we kind of kept going, would like, oh, let's pick out something in a different language, or let's pick out this, or let's pick out that. And we would get some off the wall stuff,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
you'd be like, okay. But I mean, and I have my opinions mostly because of film school as to my favorite era, but maybe we could
Yeah.
do this back and forth, right? I think this is fun.
Yeah.
Is there an era for you having the knowledge you have now, right? This back catalog
Yeah.
of knowledge, not just your childhood. This era is you're just like, I'd really love it, you know?
Yes. I want to say it's so funny because it's sort of changing
Mm-hmm.
over
Yeah.
time now.
Yeah,
It's changing
absolutely.
very, very rapidly for me right now.
Okay.
I don't like 80s stuff. I just have to say, like, first of all, Fast Times is a fucking, pardon
Mm-hmm.
my language again,
No, don't worry
is a
about it.
masterpiece.
Yes.
Amy Heckerling actually the director came into one of our classes at AFI, which was like such a treat.
Mm-hmm.
And like she like talked with us for a little bit, and I asked her a question. I was super nervous, and she is first of all so cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, no wonder this movie is fucking awesome because she's the best. Anyway,
Yeah.
but I think that movie is genuinely like a 80s comedy masterpiece. And like I have to say, like other 80s stuff I don't love.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm talking about stuff I don't like. I just think there's a lot of stuff. I feel like the 80s was almost like a Reaganism, like closed-mindedness. There's a closed-mindedness to some of the content in movies,
Yeah.
and it just turns me off. I was raised Catholic, so it's like I was like subjected to all this repression as a child, and so anytime
you're in recovery now, I'm assuming.
anytime I like see stuff where that feels closed-minded to me, it bothers me because it's like all you have to do is not be that way. You know, all you have to do is open your mind a little bit and you know, open. And that's why I think film is so amazing. I've seen films. I've never been to Russia. I've watched a bunch of Russian movies, and I've somehow, like, you know what I mean? That's just insane to even think about. Anyway, but I would say like the 70s for me is
okay,
really the best. And it's funny though, I was watching like The French Connection yesterday, and I was like,
Jean-Luc Godard was amazing, right? In that time.
Yeah. And
it's like French New Wave.
Well, so the French Connection, I was watching like Billy Friedkin, the William Friedkin 1970, I forget what. But anyway, my point was, what was I saying? The 70s I think are rad because even movies that were studio movies were really, really dense thematically. And people, I would say like late 60s or early to mid 70s is what I would define as like the coolest era, because you go back, speaking of closed-mindedness or open-mindedness, you go back to that era and artists were like really, really trying stuff. And like, there were like no rules, you know, and it was like, you know, even the Godfather movies are really.
Yeah, you have the Coppola, you have Scorsese. They're
Scorsese's
showing
my favorite.
Right, they're showing like the underbelly, the darkness. I mean, I think was Raging Bull in the 70s as well. You have Taxi.
Raging Bull was like 1980, but that means that they made it in the 70s. So that's why it feels so.
By far one of the best films of all time.
So cool.
By far. I mean, there's the use of black and white. And it's just like when he's slowing down and he slows down, like kind of the motion that that zoom in shot.
The montages too of boxing, and there's like water squirting on Robert De Niro, and
the editing's
like blood,
amazing.
blood like washing off of his huge. And he was like, dude, that movie. But that's like Raging Bull is so interesting because I realized I watched Mank. Have you seen Mank yet?
No.
The Dave Fincher. It's the new David Fincher movie. And I was like, dude, like, this is like, David Fincher is such an amazing director. But I was watching the movie and I was like, yeah, I don't know if I like this. And then I finished the movie. And David Fincher made the movie in like a 1940s style. So this doesn't relate to the 1970s. But my point is like, David Fincher put so much thought and effort into that movie that you have to watch it twice to get it. You have to watch it twice, or else you just won't. It's asking more of its audience than I think American audiences are used to right now. And I feel like, sorry, go on. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say it's asking you to think critically, like you're saying.
It's
like you, to use your own words, it's more compacted. There's so many layers that the first time around, you're just kind of left saying like, "What the fuck?" Right?
Yeah.
Really grasp it and peel away the layers. You really have to. You do have to watch it, right?
Yeah. And Raging Bull was like that for me. I watched it the first time. I was like, "What on earth?" And I love Scorsese. He's my favorite filmmaker, like far and away.
Yeah.
And I watched it, and I had seen so many other Scorsese movies before I saw Raging Bull, and I was like, "What the fuck was that?" You know? And I was so perplexed by it. And then I watched it again, and I was like, "Oh." Like it's a loop, you know, the best movies are like a loop that it's like, you know, you were talking with Emma about TikTok and how like everyone loves her closed loop. Like that is what great movies are like that. They're like these, it's almost like a Buddhist thing. It's like, they're like these like like time loops. And if you finish Raging Bull and then you go back to the front of that movie and watch it again immediately after, you're going to have like a transformational experience.
Yeah.
Because you're going to go through this man's life with all the knowledge. It's a tragic movie for that reason. Is like, as a viewer, you finish the movie and you're like, oh my God, what a tragic story. And it becomes even more tragic when you watch it again because you have the knowledge now.
Yeah.
You have the knowledge of what this man needs to do to grow. and you see how resistant he is to growing and changing in a positive way, and just how like male he is and how he can't accept love from people.
This is
Anyway.
this is Mank.
No, I'm sorry. I went back to Raging Bull. What I was saying
Okay.
about Mank.
Okay.
Sorry, I know
No,
you were probably like looking up the movie.
Because I'm just like thinking, I'm just like, that's, I mean, when you leave a movie and you walk out either like talking so passionately about it, like you or me, I mean, not everyone understands that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a level of just nerdiness that comes out, and I'm here for it, dude. You know, I'm just like, you're speaking, I'm like, this guy's speaking my language.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Raging Bull, and this the depth of like the commentary and the critical thinking that has to go into really breaking it down, right?
Yeah.
That's I think I exclusively would prefer, if I could. I mean, I watch stuff to unplug. Don't get me wrong. I'll watch the Marvel movies and have a good time. I'll watch, Mandalorian and have a good time. But I want to watch film by people who think these complex things and want to tell these complex stories, because that's life.
Yeah.
It's not simple and minimal. It's complex, right?
Yeah.
And it's not straightforward.
No.
At all.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
I just watched this one last night. And that was I'd seen an ad for it. I think it came out last year. It was on Amazon. It's called Sound of Metal. Have you seen this?
No, I want to watch it though. Yeah. I have it on my queue.
I didn't know what
whatever they call it.
Yeah, I don't know what to expect, honestly. The beginning's very nymphomaniac beginning. The loud music.
Yes. Good movie, by the way.
Amazing.
Crazy movie. Yeah.
Right, crazy. But just the juxtaposition of just the loud with the silent, and just this and that, diegetic versus non-diegetic sound. And this is, I mean, it's worth watching, so I won't ruin it for you, but definitely check it out.
I'm excited to watch it. It looks good.
Yeah. Again, caught me off guard. The acting's wonderful. All of it's really good. So, I mean, you'll have to let me know what you think, right? But as far as all this goes, I mean, you sound very passionate. Scorsese's your favorite. He keeps putting out really good stuff. He just put out Irishman.
Yes.
Most recently, I think that, I don't know, what else has he worked on recently?
Well, no, just The Irishman as far as stuff he's put out. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, he produces too, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they all do, right? They all do.
Yeah.
But and producing is a whole different job. But when it comes down to your own film and writing, what sort of content in film and stories are you putting together? I mean, tell us about Magnolia Flowers. Yeah.
Magnolia Flowers is something that I've been working on since I was since I was a junior in high school.
Okay.
Which is if you want to call it, you could call it 6.5 years if you wanted to. 5.5, really. And that's how long I've been thinking about it. Because I do seem to have this long thinking phase where I'm in my head, I'm jotting stuff down in my phone or in a notebook. And that I do a ton of thinking before anything. Like typing is the last thing I do, literally. I do not type. I refuse to type until I'm like certain of what I'm doing. And I've done my homework. That's just a rule I have for myself, because it's so tempting to just be like, I'm just going to type it out. And I just think that for me, that's not helpful. I've been working on Magnolia Flowers though, literally since then. I remember I wrote like a version of it in high school and never finished it. And that version sucked. And so I threw it out and I kept the characters and just put the characters in a new scenario. And so I started actually really writing, like typing is what I mean. In like my junior year of college. I finished it, and then I started casting in May of that year. So that's May of 2019.
Okay.
Jeez. May of 2019. I think I finished that process in June.
Okay.
That's when I cast Emma. I cast Gabe, Alec. Actually, Alec I cast long before. But I cast everyone that summer. And then that summer I got together with all the actors. I just love actors. So like I love hanging out with them. And it's like sort of a crucial thing for me to like just hang out with the actors a bunch of times before we do any actual work.
I mean,
so,
is your goal to be director then? Is that safe to say?
You mean, do I want to be a director like as a career? Yes, 100%. Yeah.
Right,
100%.
right. Because that's a big part of directing is that relationship with the actors, right?
It's the biggest part, really. I mean, it's the biggest part for the directors that I love. Scorsese, I know, speaking of him, prioritizes performances more than anything. It's like his top priority is like in every interview, he's like, yeah, performances. And it's true. I mean, you look at his movies.
Right. I mean, that's why actors stick with him for so long, right?
Yes.
You'll see De Niro in so many of his films for a reason.
Yeah. Right? And it's crazy. Like the performances he gets out of people are insane. And like I was rewatching Goodfellas yesterday, which is
just a light watch. Just a light thing.
That's my favorite movie, honestly, ever. It's like a perfect movie. Anyway, like the performances in that, I'm just like, how did you even do that?
Yeah.
Because every performance is amazing, and there's like 100 actors in that movie. Anyway, and so I think my goal, I think, when I got together with all these actors over that summer of 2019 was like, I thought I was making an ensemble kind of piece, to be honest with you. And I got to set and I was like, I'm not making an ensemble. Because making an ensemble is really hard. But the reality is I say that. But basically what happened was, the actors and I hung out for 3 days that summer. We departed. I went back to school for my senior year at USC. And meanwhile, I'm prepping the movie. I'm in school. I'm prepping the movie. I'm talking to the actors, on the phone, on FaceTime. I'm talking to my cinematographer, Ben. I'm talking to the assistant director, Kelly. I'm talking to, the crew and things. We're getting things together. Yeah. I'm literally prepping over the course of 2019 through 2020. March, I'm full swing in prep. In March, coronavirus hits, and I'm like, oh boy, I don't know if we're going to be able to do this. And honestly, I am just such a stubborn person when it comes to finishing things that I was like, I'll find a way. Like, I know it's not, we were going to shoot in May.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, obviously we're not going to shoot in May. It's fine. I calmed myself down. I also met my girlfriend around this time. Not even around this time, like in like March 13th, I met my girlfriend. And so I started developing a relationship with her, and that really calmed me down, to be honest. I think otherwise I would have been like, but she and I were spending a lot of time together. I was becoming a fuller human while I was still prepping the movie. And so I kept prepping the movie, and then I was like, I think in July we'll be able to shoot it. And we're shooting in Massachusetts. I was like, I think in July we'll be able to do it. I think. And I told everyone that, and they were like, okay. And everyone kind of stuck with me and like bared with me. And I was like, okay, I think people believe in this project because very few people have dropped out. A few actors dropped out, understandably. But in July, the bet that I hedged was exactly right. The bet I was hedging was that regulations in Massachusetts were going to line up perfectly so that during our first week of shooting, the regulations would allow for us for production to resume, for film production to resume in Massachusetts. I was, not to give myself too much credit, I was right. And that literally 3 days after, literally like the week that Massachusetts was like, okay, film production can resume safely, we started shooting like 3 days later.
Nice.
We shot the movie for 15 days. It was brutal. And it was, the shoot went great, for the record. Like the shoot went really, really smoothly.
Good.
But I just realized, like, I cannot be the sole producer of my projects anymore. It is too stressful. It is too stressful. So I'm trying to direct and produce, which is, by the way, impossible. I think it's impossible. I don't think it's an actual, and I remember I was talking to some producer recently, and I was like, what does it look like when directors are producers on their own project? And she was like, it doesn't look like much. And I was like, I know what you mean.
Well, for those listeners, right? The people listening
Yeah.
or watching, what does a producer do specifically versus a director, and why does that make sense to you?
A producer does everything. They are okay, so it depends on the budget level.
Okay.
The producer, though, this is why, like, in the 70s, speaking of the 70s,
Mm-hmm.
like big producers like Mel Stewart or something, who did Willy Wonka, like big producers like that, if a movie got made, the producer's name was all fucking over it.
Mm-hmm.
For a reason, though, because like producers, they find the money, they find the talent, they hire people, sometimes they find intellectual property that becomes the movie. Like producers,
they're the business manager.
Producers are the business people of the movie, and hopefully they're a creative person as well, so that they don't ruin the movie. But producers are a creative business person who is pushing the film to completion. The producer is the only person who's really with the film from start to finish completely.
Right.
Because they have control. They're guaranteed, not even guaranteed, they're supposed to have control over marketing, distribution, all that stuff too. So yeah, for people who don't know, producers are like the whole thing. I mean, like,
well,
if a movie,
the director has a creative kind of control, right? But where the producer has the big picture control.
I think I'm hyperbolizing to compensate for, I think, people's understanding. Like, sometimes people are like, oh, Chris Nolan, does everything. It's like, no. When a movie that big, like Chris Nolan and like 6 other people do everything to make sure that movie is
There's an executive producer, and then there's other producers, right?
Yes.
There's a team of producers.
And usually, like, movie credits are also very confusing. So sometimes executive producers are people who donated a bunch of money and had no involvement. Sometimes they're people who
pay for the credit. Yeah.
It's like,
yeah,
it's weird in movies. Anyway, but
it's a business, man.
Yeah, it is a business.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm sorry I'm rambling on and on. The point is, okay, we shot the movie. It went great.
Yeah.
But I was like super stressed for a lot of it, admittedly. Luckily, again, my girlfriend was there on set, and like she was doing wardrobe on set as well, because our wardrobe person backed out a week before we shot. And Brooke, my girlfriend, has like an amazing fashion sense. So I was just like, you can do this, I think, because all the prep work had been done. And she was like, yeah, I'll do it. So she was there also, like, keeping me calm during the whole thing, but it was very stressful. But it was still an amazing experience, and I learned the amount of information that went into my head every day was insane. Like, you really, like, people say, oh, learn by doing. Like, in film, it's like, because there's just no other way, like, to learn as much as you need to learn. Like, and luckily I didn't make a huge pile of mistakes. I could have, because some people make their first movie and it's a massive failure. And like, I was terrified. There's always the possibility of that, right? But it wasn't. It was a success, and I made some mistakes, not a heap of mistakes. I think even the best directors probably make a handful of mistakes every time they make a movie.
It's a process. It's the process, man.
It's a process. Right? And
you're
you can also
really done. You're never really done with the project. You just stop.
You're not done. You're never done. I'm not done. I have an assembly cut finished, and I've been watching it over and over and over before I hand it off to my second editor. And I'm like, I can't even enjoy it. Like, it's so hard to enjoy it yet because it's not done. There's so much work that has to be done on it still. Like, it's insane, like, how much work goes into movies.
It's a lot. It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
People wonder why, why it's not that easy, or they take it for granted, right? They see the end of production. They don't see everything that went into it from the beginning to the end, like you say. So it is a lot of work, and a lot of different hands and minds at work trying to bring this thing across the finish line. Yeah. And I mean, it seems, you're the second person regarding, tied to this production that I have on here. It's, whether it's the actor, the director, or the everything else, like you, it's gonna take a team to really kind of complete it, and doing it by yourself could drive you insane.
Yes, it could. And luckily it didn't.
Yeah.
But,
TBD, my friend.
Yeah, right. It's like when I'm working on it 5 months from now, still it'll, we'll see what happens. But, yeah, at this point, so just to wrap up what I was saying,
Mm-hmm.
can you hear that? There's like a dehumidifier.
You're good, man.
Okay. Um, I was the primary editor, so I took like a week off after filming,
Mm-hmm.
and then started editing after that. I've been editing for the past 4 months or so.
Mm-hmm.
I finished an assembly cut a couple weeks ago. An assembly cut, for people who don't know, is just the first time the movie is fully assembled. And there's like minimal sound design in it. There's temp score in it. So it gives the rest of the post-production creative team an idea, a very good idea of what the movie is going to end up looking like.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I really do have to, at this point, in a month or so, I'm going to relinquish it to a second editor, because editing the movie that I've been working on for, whatever you want to call it, 2 years or something, 2 years like of full work, like editing that movie myself, you're just too close to it. I finished the movie and I'm trying to rewatch this assembly cut over and over.
Yeah.
And there's things I just can't see because I was there. I was there on the day that we shot this thing and the refrigerator was on and we forgot in one take to turn it off. And then on the other take, it was on. And, these kinds of things that'll, honestly, they bother you, right? And I think, but when the process is fully completed, they won't bother me as much. I know that because I am happy with the assembly cut. I'm really happy with it.
Yeah.
But like, there's still all these little things, and I'm like, they're just distracting me from what matters most, which is the story working? Are the performances working? Is the story working?
Mm-hmm.
Does the movie flow well? All these things. Those are the most important things. And I feel like I'm no longer in a position to make the absolute best calls on that. So I'm handing it off to a second editor. The second editor will present me with some extra cuts, and I'll meet somewhere in the middle with the second editor on what I want the final cut to look like.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the rest of everything will happen. Color correction, sound mixing, etc.
All those things. Yeah. I mean, that makes absolute sense. So as far as this production goes, a couple of things, kind of high overview look as to what the story is about really quickly, so our listeners know. And two, you need some assistance with the production costs, right? The post-production costs. So let's do that as well. So tell me about the story. What's this film about?
Magnolia Flowers is about Caitlin Doyle, who is a 21-year-old college student, who is suicidal, played by Emma Waters. Played, by the way, really brilliantly by Emma Waters. I don't think people are prepared for this young woman who has never acted in a feature film before.
She's
her performance is it's as good as anyone could have done. Honestly, I watch it and I'm and even on set, I didn't realize how good it was. I knew it was good because I told her at the end, I was like, you did an amazing job. And then I'm watching it and I'm like, holy shit. You can see in detail how amazing it was. Anyway, so Caitlin gets sent home from school. She's a college student, like I said, because she's suicidal and she's self-harming. And so her therapist at school figures out that she's, cutting herself and basically threatening quietly to kill herself, which, a lot of schools, private schools at least, have a policy about, students can't really finish a semester if they're in that sort of state. And so that she gets sent home from school, she sort of runs away, but you have to watch the movie to see what I'm talking about. She escapes school, so to speak, and gets picked up by her two younger brothers, Connell and Adam. Adam is 17, Connell is 18. Connell's a high school senior, Adam's a junior. And so Kate has to spend a New England winter with her brothers. And they're latchkey kids, they're raised by their mom, but their mom sort of is really wealthy real estate agent. And she sort of just flies around the world with her boyfriend and is never home.
Yeah.
So Kate is supremely depressed, hates the winter. It's her least favorite season. She's stuck at home with her brothers. Spring comes around and she decides to throw a party for her younger brothers so they can have some fun because she's feeling somewhat better. And something goes horribly wrong at the party. And one of the Connell, the middle brother, ends up missing.
Mm-hmm.
And Kate and Connell's friends have to go find Connell basically and bring him back.
Don't give too much away.
I won't. It's an epic little movie. We made it for $40,000 production. We did the production for $40,000. I shouldn't say we made it because the sum total is yet to be determined.
Mm-hmm.
And we are currently raising money for our post-production costs, which go to all the things that I already mentioned, which are editing, like more editing,
color correction,
sound mixing, sound design, music licensing, really important things. So we are currently raising money for those things. For people listening, you can go to my Instagram at Colin Charles Dale, Colin with one L, not two, at Colin Charles Dale. And there's a link in my bio to the Indiegogo page. We have about half of our goal on Indiegogo, which is $20,000 raised. I got a ton of money in Venmo from people that saw Emma's TikTok. I got a ton of money from people in that respect. So we are about we have about $12,000 out of the 20,000 at least that we want to raise. So people who are listening, if you want to look into the Indiegogo, you can again go to my Instagram at Colin Charles Dale. You can also just Venmo me directly, which people surprisingly enough do more frequently than they do the Indiegogo. Like people love to just Venmo me the money, which is really interesting. Not something I expected, but it's true. So you can Venmo me at Colin-Dale-4.
Okay.
That's it. So I'm sorry, that was the plug. That was the one plug.
That was the plug. No, it's all good. I mean, you text me those links and I'll share it with people, right?
Sure.
What are your hopes with all of this? That'll be the last question. I mean, like, what are your hopes for this production and, your projects moving forward?
I think the film will do really well at festivals. I really want to get into Sundance.
Nice.
I think it can get into Sundance. Like I really do believe that. It's a high quality piece of work. And I want it to like end up on Netflix. Like I want it to end up on the best streaming platform it can end up on, which is Netflix. Because there's going to be an audience for it. And now that Emma's like a TikTok star, there's definitely going to be an audience for it of like half a million people or something.
Yeah.
But who just want to see her in a movie. But it deserves a place on a streaming platform, I think.
Yeah.
That's my hope. My hope is that it gets scooped up by maybe a production company or a distribution company who have the ability to get it on Netflix. That's sort of how I know other people who have gotten stuff like that done, and that's essentially how it happens. You don't really sell it directly to Netflix per se. Anyway, that's just how the business works. But I want it to do really well at festivals, and I want it to get streaming distribution. Yeah. I think it deserves both of those things. I think it can get both of those things. It's a fresh, I hate the word fresh. It's a fresh movie though. I don't know if it's the first time I've ever really put my voice fully on display. The actors I cast, I have a ton of faith in, and they're amazing in the movie. The crew did like such an amazing job. My cinematographer, Ben Grant, is going to be one of the best cinematographers in the business in 10 years, I'm convinced, because he's just an ace. But yeah, the crew was amazing. It's just a film made by young people at like a very high level. Like, I think, I don't know. I think it's sort of like, I think the new wave of filmmaking or the new wave of American filmmaking at least, is like people making movies for $60,000 and at their house. And just like those things being on Netflix. Like, I think Francis Coppola said something along the lines of like, one day film will be super cheap to make. Films will be way cheaper to make. And he said like, that'll be when film becomes an actual art form. Is when like it's more democratic,
right? It's not controlled by a certain
right
distribution, and the money isn't as held in in higher regard than the actual creativity of it, right?
Yes,
And
totally.
that makes absolute sense. I
Yeah.
remember in film school just thinking back to like being so irked by the whole idea of just like people watching my art form and saying it's entertainment.
Hmm.
It should be, yeah, hopefully it does, hopefully it resonates
Yeah.
with you. But for me, I'm just like, this is an art form, right? It's moving
Yeah.
photographs and storytelling, and it's a mishmash of different things, from makeup to set design to all
Yeah.
of this, right? So there really
Yeah.
is an art,
Yes.
despite that. We just need to put it in the hands of the people, right?
Yeah. No. Yeah. I totally agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
slow. You're right. It's slowly happening like that, man. Any advice to
Yeah.
young filmmakers out there?
Filmmakers. I am a young filmmaker, so I can speak to the young filmmakers from a young filmmaker.
Sure.
Dude, I think it's sort of speaks to what we were just saying, which is you have to you cannot wait for people's permission to make things. The
Hmm.
reality is that you'll make 10 short films,
Hmm.
unless you're like, first of all, like, I don't want to speak, I'm speaking for myself too, but like, there are some filmmakers who are just pure talent.
Yeah.
And Ryan Coogler was one of them. Like, I watched
Hmm.
Ryan Coogler's, like, one of his first films he made at USC. It was like literally one of the first short films he had ever made. It's a masterpiece. I
Hmm.
was like, okay, so no wonder he directed Black Panther. Like, he's a genius. Anyway, and Paul Thomas Anderson was a little bit like that. Like, there are some people who will make literally one film and then it's like straight to the top,
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
that won't happen for 99% of people.
Hmm.
It hasn't happened for me, I can assure you.
Hmm.
Um, I made like literally 9 or 10 short films that were not good,
Hmm.
and I made a fool out of myself, in some respect. And I was doing this throughout high school and throughout college. But the thing is, you have to make a fool out of yourself before you do something that where people go, "Oh, yes, this is very good." Like,
Hmm.
some people are just so. Some people think they spend so much time being like, "Oh, it has to be really good,"
Yeah.
and I think that's just a
Mm.
waste of time.
Yeah.
You really do have to make. You really do have to. You have to try and experiment, and eventually you'll find out what your voice is, and then you can make your real film. Like, I feel like Magnolia Flowers is like my first for real film,
Yeah.
and I've been taking filmmaking seriously forever, but Magnolia Flowers is the first thing that I can show to people and be like, this is me. Here
Hmm.
it is,
Hmm.
and even as I say that, I'm writing my next films and I'm like, wait, these are way better than my last one. Of course I'm going to feel that way because I'm growing. But you just have to be willing to make an absolute fool out of yourself. And you have to be willing to like make stuff that isn't good before you make something that's good.
Yeah.
And honestly, people will laugh at you. They'll say it. So I had one person, the thing that hurt my feelings the most, I remember I made a film when I was in college. And I remember overhearing someone just say they thought it was horrible. And it hurt my feeling. It like really hurt my feelings. And I honestly wanted to like fight the person. I was just like, how dare you say that? But honestly,
Hmm.
who cares?
Yeah.
It's like you just have to just make stuff. If you really love it and you really care about it, you just do it.
And you
You
create
know?
it, and you keep going and keep
Yeah.
creating, and you'll progress.
Yes.
No matter what, you're going to get
Yeah.
better, but you can't get better if you don't keep doing it.
Yes.
Right. And it sucks
Totally.
because it does kind of take this sort of resilience to it. You really have to be stubborn and really really just want it, right? Have
Yeah.
no backup plan and be like, this is it, guys.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm doing. And then you're just going to just do it. Go for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome, man. So thank you so much. Send me those links. You guys,
I
I'm
will.
going to hit stop record, but if you
Okay.
guys are listening, thank you so much for listening. We love you guys. Make sure to donate and to check the film out when it comes out. I'll make sure to link it and hype
Please.
it up when it does come out. Again,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much for coming.
Dude, thank you. This was